Imagine someone whose sole purpose in life, for so much of it, had been to destroy your very own. Dr. Otto Octavius. A scientific genius with an ego to pair well with his intellect. A truly gifted mind who believes he is held back by the people surrounding him, laughing at him and berating him. Overwhelmed with nothing but his insecurity and his very need to be the best, as well as to show people that he is the best. Peter Benjamin Parker. A young man stricken with great responsibility to pair well with his great power. A truly gifted mind who is motivated by the people surrounding him, supporting him, and loving him. Overwhelmed by the guilt that provokes him to put his own needs aside and to sacrifice what he wants in an effort to do the right thing. Spider-Man. Champion of the people. Friendly neighborhood menace and a thorn in the side of Otto Octavius. Every attempt to display his scientific ability and intellectual prowess is thwarted by the red and blue menace, who has nothing for Otto but a relentless stream of insults and injuries. The people who had raised Otto by making a mockery of his very existence, encapsulated by this one hero, given his share of skepticism but outweighed by his acts of heroism. Dr. Octopus. A mad genius and an even more dangerous man. A master planner who is constantly several steps ahead and could find numerous ways to force you to wish you hadn't questioned him. One of Spider-Man's most feared foes, managing to get the best of the webhead on certain occasions. Spider-Man is faced bipolar billionaires who play chess for the people in their lives. Symbiotic parasites that feed on the very worst of the human conscience. Galactic threats that unite the guardians of our planet to stand up and fight. And yet somehow, Peter's biggest loss is by the hands of his own mistakes. The people he let down, and a haunting promise made by Otto Octavius. Imagine someone whose sole purpose in life, for so much of it, had been to destroy your very own, finally had a chance to take control of it. In a last-ditch effort to finally get one over on the wall crawler, Octavius seized the opportunity to switch minds with Spider-Man and honed in on the advantages of his adversary's physical form, leaving the once triumphant Peter Parker in Otto's weak, frail, dying body. Dr. Octopus had done it. He had finally defeated his longtime foe, a thorn on his side pulled out. Otto had now been bestowed the privilege of being Spider-Man, and in his reign over this vessel, he uses this power as a way to fulfill the responsibilities he bestowed upon himself during his time as Dr. Octopus, and that is complete control and to display his true genius. He uses this identity as a way to advance Peter's academics, build up an army of robots, to survey the city as to ensure its safety, as well as solving the serial happenings of supervillains and criminals in his most brutal but efficient methods. Otto takes the reins of Peter's truly mundane life and somehow manages to benefit both himself and New York with him. But Peter Benjamin Parker, a young man stricken with great responsibility to pair well with his great power, has so much left to fight for, and it is up to him to take his life back. Otto had taken control of Peter's body, but the memories are still kept inside. Those memories manifested into a new consciousness, a remnant of what Peter Parker was, which begins a fight for who truly deserves control of Spider-Man. Imagine someone whose sole purpose in life, for so much of it, had been to destroy your very own, finally had a chance to take control of it, and leave you with a promise. Otto plans on erasing every last fragment of Peter Parker from his mind, as a way of fully freeing him from the baggage that his classic foe brings alongside him. Peter stands and fights for the right to live his life and take everything back from a man who he believes would stop at nothing to destroy it. The fight takes place among the memories that Peter has made throughout his rich history, and we are all here to see it. To see it all crumble down, reduced to rubble and ash as decades upon decades of the famed life of Peter Parker gradually wisp away in front of us. But Peter still has one thing that motivates him to keep getting back up, and that's the people around him. Being surrounded by the people that support him, love him, and care for him, Peter rises up and is ready for whatever Octavius may throw at him. But this is Otto's game. Octavius is in charge and he conjures up villains made up of Peter's fears and anxieties, including a very familiar looking thug who is quintessential to Peter's path. One by one, the fearsome foes of Spider-Man kill each of Peter's loved ones. Harry, MJ, Gwen, Jameson, and Peter watches in horror as Uncle Ben dies right before him. And as he cries out witnessing his uncle's death, he slowly, painfully tries to remember his name, but with such faint attempts at figuring out the name of the man who taught Peter the most important lessons he needs. A father figure no one would dare replace, and Peter forgets him, leaving him with nothing more to fight with but the mask. Peter and Octavius add another installment in their famous bouts as Spider-Man has Dr. Octopus almost beat, But as this battle reaches its final moments, Otto realizes that he's no longer Dr. Octopus. He's also Spider-Man. Peter no longer has to fight Dr. Octopus. He has to fight Spider-Man. As both duel with each other as a final dance between two lifelong enemies, the visual of seeing Peter Parker battle a Spider-Man dedicated to his responsibilities to a fault provides enough for us, the reader, to be reminded of the core of Spider-Man's character, the inverse between personas, how sacrifices have to be made for one's intentions to be met. Peter has to sacrifice his wants in order to help more people as Spider-Man, and in doing so, he hurts the people he cares for the most. Otto uses this against our hero as he reminds him of every shortcoming, every poor judgment, using the concept of power and responsibility against Peter, and he promises him, Otto swears, that he would do a better job than Peter ever could. Otto tells Peter that he doesn't deserve to be Spider-Man. Otto Octavius has won. In his final moments, Peter Parker scrambles desperately, trying to remember who he is, but it's not enough. Peter gradually forgets his role as Spider-Man, slowly forgets his own name, and fades to black. Villains are supposed to bring out the very best of the hero, to challenge the protagonist and push them to the limit. This comic is special because it displays how much of Spider-Man's life is compromised by mistakes and failures. Peter's loss in this issue cuts like a knife in showing how even the love Peter feels for the people he holds dear doesn't add up to the hate that Octavius feels in his heart. Otto was never part of a family, or even a support system, so he indifferently dismisses Peter's loved ones. Otto even calls into question the philosophy of great power also coming with great responsibility, not only stating that, but also showing how Peter disobeys by not using his power to the most responsible extent. That is Otto's promise, to be a better Spider-Man than Peter ever could hope to be. Otto Octavius' haunting promise to be a superior Spider-Man.